Hi, everyone. My name is Judith Helfand. I'm a documentary filmmaker based in New York City, and it's really my privilege to get to spend the next 30 minutes with the directors of Abortion Helpline. This is Lisa. I'm going to be spending time with Janet Goldwater, Barbara Addy, and Mike Addy. I spent this morning watching this film, thinking about it, getting very, very, very angry. And I'm really grateful to all of you for making this film. So let's watch the trailer and then let's talk about it.
Gentleman from Illinois.
Mr. Chairman, we cannot save the unborn of the rich. If the pregnant woman wants to destroy the child in her womb, she can. Thank God we can save some of the children of the poor. And that's what I want to do. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
The gentleman yield, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
Women's Medical Fund, Lisa speaking. How may I help you?
Having an abortion at Planned Parenthood. It was $450, and they told me my insurance does not cover it.
Can you tell me a little bit about your living situation?
I'm raising 3 kids by myself. The father does not help. I work full-time.
How much do you have set aside for the procedure?
I have $125. That's my savings.
Do you have other ideas about how to raise money for the procedure?
I'm not going to be able to do anything more than that. I mean, this is my only option.
Thank you for making this, and thank you for having the restraint that you did, so that I could, and I can only imagine all your audiences could feel the complexity that exists in this film. And I think the first thing that struck me was just this contrast between the tenderness of the Lisas and their ability to listen with so much compassion and so much restraint and a real heart to the women who are calling, and then the contrast to the ego and the hubris and the arrogance of the Hyde Amendment, and even the arrogance of the politicians who made that Hyde Amendment, and that line, which I will never ever forget: we can't save the children of the rich, but we could save the children of the poor. So I still have this like crazy idea that we live in a country where there's a division between church and state, but there isn't. And the state of our lives and the state of our humanity and the state of our compassion and the state of our morality is just in a very, very, very bad place. So anyway, I'm very angry, but very grateful to be with you. And
well, Judith, first of all, let me just say that we're so grateful to you for doing this and for helping us to elevate the issues in this film. I'm glad we made you angry. It makes us angry, and I think that was how this film got started. We came across this idea about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, after the disastrous presidential election. Barbara and I had just finished a feature film. We were sort of feeling like, wow, the country's going to go in the right direction now. Maybe we'll take a little break. And then we all know what happened. And, and we felt that people that were vulnerable were really going to be victimized by that new administration. And of course, we were right. But I had worked in the abortion fund where we filmed. I worked as a volunteer, and I had heard those calls, and I had met some of the Lisas over the years. And we just realized those young women are doing the job that the government should be doing for those callers. They're sort of the as you say, the gentle, compassionate counterpoint to cynical politicians.
how did you come up with this structure? I mean, as I was watching it, I mean, it's really, at first it's seductively simple and very nuanced, but um, but it's not. And I bet this could have been many different kinds of movies. And I wonder how did you work on this interplay?
Well, Jen and I have traditionally made feature-length documentaries, an hour to an hour and a half. And so when we conceived this documentary, we conceived it in the same way we've done so many of our others, as an hour-long piece giving the history of the Hyde Amendment, a lot more background. But then as we started filming and working with Mike, we just kept on narrowing it down and look to its essence and saying, what is the most important thing that we need to know about the impact of this legislation on poor women? And it was those conversations that were happening in one small room over and over again, every day, callers struggling to get through because they don't have the $300 or $400 that it takes to be able to pay for an abortion. And I have to give a lot of credit to Mike for us whittling it down as much as we did, because the initial vision was much broader and longer, and Mike really helped us focus the piece. So I'll pass it to Mike.
Yeah, I think what's interesting for me is just to think about like where this film would be seen. And obviously like it was originally intended as this advocacy piece. And so I think that imagining of you were watching this online, that really minimalist approach works, I think, much better for that, thinking about that format and that audience. It was interesting for me to come into it because when I started this, I didn't know what the Hyde Amendment was. And I was just like stunned that this existed. I mean, that clip of Henry Hyde still gives me chills when I see it, to hear what he says. And when we were lucky to screen this to an audience and you get that very similar reaction in the room, people really are stunned that somebody would actually say that. I mean, it's just like, it's racism and classism embodied right there on the screen for you. And I just felt like I was so moved by what I was hearing. And I just wanted, to me, as a film, all you really needed were those phone calls and then contrasting it with whatever was happening on the floor. And that was kind of it. I think the other really critical aspect to that are the screens that you see within the film, those bits of information that kind of put like a number, almost like a numerical quantity on like what they're going through. And to me, that was so enlightening just to see, is like realizing how little I understood about poverty in that moment, about what $25, $50 could do for somebody. Money that we may not really like consider that seriously is like of utmost importance to the women who are calling in. And that was really enlightening as well. So, it was one of these like reductive, iterative processes. And I think that it just sort of like really landed at that length.
I think it's so powerful. And while I was watching it, I was imagining, who are these discrete audiences and how do they experience this film? Now, I don't know if you've shown it on Capitol Hill. Capitol Hill is a complicated place right now. But can you imagine if you could show it on the floor of the Capitol and they could actually experience the dissonance between that room and those calls and those voices and the power and what happens in their room and their voices, and just to be able to see that juxtaposition and then talk about it? Like, has that happened yet?
Yeah. I know Judith as a filmmaker who's done, films with strong advocacy issues. That there's always you always have the audiences where you're afraid that you're just preaching to the choir. And then there's the issue of how do you get it? I mean, I always feel like the choir needs to be educated just like everyone else. It's not a bad thing.
Practice.
Yeah, we need to keep ourselves knowledgeable and but there's that issue of how do you get it to those policy leaders that can we are well, we're working with a lot of advocacy groups, both grassroots and national, but we do have an organization that's offering to try to make that happen, where legislative aides, will have access to the film, and excitingly, there's actually a legislative initiative right now, the Each Woman Act, which was sponsored by Barbara Lee and is going to be pushed probably this year, which would overturn the Hyde Amendment. So it aligns perfectly with the opportunity for people to see this film.
Well, I mean, look, even if you made like a 3.5-minute version that could go on someone's phone, that they could watch while they're walking from their office to the chambers, or while they're in that little cart in that maze down there, and you could even tell them, we've timed it, and we have, there's the version on your phone that you could watch with your head down, don't trip, and then there's the version that you could watch at your desk, and then there's the pop-up version that you could do outside with some popcorn, or the one that you blast on the wall. It's the perfect length, and you could actually make a shorter version, and they would get it. I really hope that that's the case. I think the juxtaposition will be shocking for them, and I think it's a juxtaposition that they very rarely have access to. And I think that's important. I mean, the other audience is in the interim, while we're waiting for that law to be, for that amendment to be overturned, and for the laws to be changed, and for us to actually live in the kinder, more realistic, gentler, humane nation that I want to believe that we are going to return to, that puts public health, at the center. These numbers are not that big. And I could imagine the chorus watching this and saying, okay, I'm going to send $23 right now. Like, oh my goodness. Like, I wish there was like a little clock, and that there was people who signed up to find out, where is the fund today? And maybe once a week I make a commitment to send $5, and I'm going to figure out what time of day do they really need me. Like, there must be some kind of app that could be made that lets us know, if we want to, where they are and how we can be part of the checks and balances.
I love that, Judith.
It's a latte.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, these are exciting ideas, and this is, and we're doing nothing but pushing this film right now. So I love all these ideas. I mean, right now, I'm so glad you're contributing to funds, because it's not the ultimate solution. That's never going to solve the problem. But right now, there are over 70 funds across the country, and that's because at least that many are needed. But we stay in very close touch with the fund here in Philadelphia. They say that, well, this is actually last year, that they felt like they were probably meeting a third of the need. That means that there were 2/3 of people who wanted to end a pregnancy who weren't able to. And that was last year. And I think with COVID, apparently demand is up. There's just, difficulty with contraception. There's different, you can imagine all the COVID related, of course, people's personal finances are impacted. So, so this year's been terrible.
I can only imagine, the reason to be on a short list is to have that moment where people are really listening. And I think that if there's a way to link, people to the fund that's closest to where they live, and link the survival by zip code problem that we all understand in such a profound way because of COVID, to this, and to be able to say, in the same way that we have mutual aid funds that are very neighborhood specific and very zip code and geo-located, maybe there's a way to geolocate and understand where is the closest fund to where you live. And could I, can I sign up so that I know, like, what's their shortfall each week? And maybe, if 100 or 200 or 500 people signed up and they each pledged, $1 a week, like we would be able to make up for some of this shortfall. And while we're waiting for Barbara Lee's legislation to happen, we could be helpful.
Well,
I think people don't. I had no idea there were 70 funds. So it's like multiply that phone and that little room by 70 rooms, hundreds of people all across the country.
well, Judith, on our website, we have a link to the National Network of Abortion Funds. And on their website, you can type in your zip code and it'll tell you the fund closest to you. And it lists all the funds, the 70 plus funds in the United States. And the National Network of Abortion Funds has a link to each of those individual funds. So people can find the funds in their area that way. And also just to give you a perspective on what Janet was saying of the need for help, is that the Women's Medical Fund, where we filmed, helped over 3,000 women last year, and they're only meeting a third of the need. So we can see how great the need is, how so many low-income people are forced to carry unwanted pregnancies to term, and which will throw them into even more poverty than they're already in. So it is a huge problem.
That's one of the tensions in the movie that I found so compelling is that we know more than the women on the phone do about what they're really going to be able to get. And then we have to watch the drama of being incredibly compassionate and very restrained and loving. So it works in a very it's a very emotional and very psychological and very complicated little weave. Did you feel all that? I mean, as you were suturing this together?
I think for me, what I felt was I was always trying to sort of make sense of the system that the fund was using, because it's kind of like, it seems sort of draconian in a way that they would only be open for a certain period of time during each day and have a limited number of funds they could disperse. Because when you're sitting there in the room and you're hearing the call and you're hearing the desperation, you immediately just want to give them all the money to solve all of their problems. Like that's how you feel. Like when I'm shooting that when I was shooting, I was almost like, I want to reach into my wallet and like write a check right then. But this is the best possible solution. And I just felt like it's such a weird reflection upon our healthcare system in this country that like this is the best possible solution to deal with this. That's what was so disturbing to me about it. I mean, and the idea that we're living in a world where people have to like raise money for their medical procedures on GoFundMe. I mean, that was sort of the broader tension at play there, was like how this reflects upon the way healthcare works in our country.
So what's a country where it does work? If someone needs an abortion, they get it. Where does that happen? Canada?
Well, so in most of the EU countries, there's now, I mean, ironically, countries that we think of as being more more wedded to the Catholic Church, now have abortion on request, as they call it, and it's available if your insurance covers it. And because they have national health systems, we know what insurance means. I mean, we have we have national health insurance for people that are low income, and it doesn't cover it. So, I mean, that's the irony, is that we have a health system which was devised with the understanding that, that people that are struggling financially cannot afford to pay for their own health care. We know that.
So they get Medicare.
So they get Medicaid. And in this case, and in how many states? 33 states. That means that, that your medical insurance won't cover it. So yeah, I mean, we've politicized
some elements of medical care and public health. We've decided that's not medical care.
Yeah, not really some, really just this one.
Yes, abortion is not, by many politicians, abortion is not considered a medical procedure. It's not medical, and so therefore it can be denied. You know, and there are other issues, other restrictions that governments have put into place to make it also difficult. In addition to insurance not paying for an abortion, in some parts of the country, like the South and parts of the Midwest, you might have to travel thousands of miles to find a clinic. You might have to take days off from work. There's a waiting period. You'll have to find childcare. It's a whole slew of other costs that are involved in addition to paying for the procedure itself. And so for many women, you know, women who live in the South, it's really, abortion is, unless you have money, it's inaccessible. So, you know, abortion is easily accessible for people with money, but for the poor, it's not.
So do you see a way out for us?
I mean, you know, the Each Woman Act, which I mentioned before, is a very, you know, it's the solution, and that initiative has been pushed in the last, really has risen to national viability, I think, because of groups that are being led by women of color, and I think it's going to be a real discussion. I mean, I think the other thing is that you know, should things in the Supreme Court go the wrong way, and the issue is pushed back to the states, you know, we're now having the discussion about whether public funds should go towards abortion, and I think we can work on it on the state level. So it's, you know, it's not a rosy future, but it's a future.
But unfortunately, it's the state, it's at the local and state level that the most draconian laws got put in place, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's where all the rollbacks took place, right?
Yeah.
So that's really where our support has to always be, is at the state level. That's right.
That's right. And it just, and this just has to become an issue that's depoliticized, that this is about families. This isn't a, you know, I mean, it is about controlling women's bodies, but it shouldn't be. This is about stabilizing families and communities, and we have to frame it that way.
But why can't we just take the church and the synagogue and the mosque and any of those that want to get inside our bodies and just take them out of the state? Is that like, can't we just, is there any chance that can ever happen again?
It seems like our country is so polarized. When you have like 70 million people who voted for Trump the last time, who support his draconian policies, we've got a really divided country, sadly.
But I think Poland is an interesting, you were asking about other countries. I think Poland, what's happening in Poland is an interesting example, because that's a, you know, religious country, or I don't know, all countries are religious, but that's, you know, that's a country that where people have strong religious feelings. And the fact is that when you take a right away, women there had access to abortion. When you start to retract that right, people take to the streets, and it's not just women in the streets in those demonstrations. It's families protesting. I mean, I think that we will see if you know, if we can make people understand that it's not just the voiceless and the vulnerable among us that are losing this right. It's going, you know, that we need to care about all of us. You know, I think people will protest.
I hope so. And I think your film is very, very powerful. I also think it's really interesting that I mean, it is about race, and it is about class. We also don't, well, it's about race and class. And you know, as a country, you know, we're finally learning how to talk about that which we have not been able to really talk about in the real, vibrant, hard, critical life and death way that we have to, that is happening every single day. And I think that this film is part of that discussion. I'm so glad you made it, and I hope that it really will be used by the policymakers who absolutely need to see it. I want to believe that people who are very hard-hearted and cynical, and you know, thinking about their constituency and putting that constituency over the lives and the needs and the futures of women and their families, you know, they might have the capacity to be moved by the tenderness in this film, and you know, and the hope and the need and the strength in the voices of the women who are making those calls, and the women and the Lisas who are receiving them. So thank you for making such a beautifully crafted, subtle, nuanced call to action. It's a really, really important film at a very important moment. And luckily there are, you know, new policymakers that are in the House and in the Senate who I think can run with this. So I do want you to make a little short version they could watch on your phone. How can people see this? I know, is it being streamed by topic?
Yeah, it's on. You can find it on Topics. It's on Topics, so it's on their YouTube channel, and it's on their Vimeo channel as well. And it's also on the platform Argo for this coming week as well.
Oh, wonderful. And have people been like doing any watch parties, or kind of like watching it and then having a conversation and finding out where's the closest fund to where they live?
Well, tonight, If, When, How, which is Law Students for Reproductive Justice, are teaming with 3 other organizations to have a giant watch party.
Really?
And I hope everybody at the end of that jumps on their computers and makes a donation. But yeah, we have a wonderful impact team that are helping us to get it out to all those people. Yeah.
Okay. And I also think it would be an amazing campus organizing tool. So I think this film will have a very, very robust life. Unfortunately, it's very needed, and I'm so glad it's as short as it is, because it's the right length to have a long impact. So thank you for making it. I wish the best for all of you, and I hope it changed the hearts and minds that need to be changed.
Thank you for doing this, Judith.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Oh, what an honor for me. Thank you.
And we'll send you the 3-minute version.
Okay.